All right, and welcome. This is part of an educational series I do, and today we're going to be talking about the various inspection types that we deal with in the state of Florida. This may be applicable with other states, but today I'm going to focus on the state of Florida and inspection types. We're going to be talking about as-is inspections and then the standard inspection with repair. Now, two very different ones, and the reason why I'm highlighting this is just part of the contract. The inspection is a very vital part of the contract. I'm going to go out on a limb based on my 17 years of experience and say it's one of the number one reasons why transactions fall apart on the back end is due to inspection. And that's not because the inspections get messy and a lot of the houses are in bad disrepair. Most of it is because of the wrong expectations up front about how the inspection goes, what's involved in the repair, and things that you should look for. And honestly, picking out which inspection clause fits you and what you're looking for based on the house. So my purpose today is I'm just going to break down the as is side of things and the standard with repair side of things to help you understand kind of what you're walking into as both a buyer or a seller and ultimately choose what's best for you. So strictly educational, got some documents for you. We're going to go glasses on, get knee deep into this. So let's go with it. And the first thing we're going to go over is just some basics on the as-is contract versus the standard contract. Okay. Now, as-is contract, the seller's repair obligation. Under an as-is contract, that first line, the seller has no obligation to repair. They're agreeing to sell you the property as is because that's what you asked for on your contract. All right. On the standard contract, seller obligation is they must repair up to a set limit. Now, typically with the contract we use in the state of Florida, that repair limit is 1.5% of the sales price maximum for seller obligation. Okay. But a lot of times, buyers and sellers will negotiate a repair limit up front that might be different than that 1.5%. Let's use $5,000 for this example. Let's say you're going into the contract and the seller is obligated to make $5,000 in repair if necessary. We're going to go over that, or if required. We're going to go over that a little later. Buyer rights during the inspection. Okay, buyer rights during the inspection. So for an as-is contract, the buyer can cancel for any reason within the inspection period. Okay. Now on the contract, it just basically says in the buyer's sole discretion. There are some separate addenda out there that say that if the repair limit, if the repairs exceed $250 or something like that, but for general purposes, and as is inspection, the buyer is going in and making an inspection. And if they are not satisfied with the inspection, they have the right to cancel in their sole discretion based on the inspection report when they hired a licensed contractor. Okay, that's how it goes. Now, with a standard contract, the buyer's rights are they can negotiate repairs and the seller must fix certain issues. So the key there for the buyer is, one, you have the ability just to walk away if you're not satisfied. Two, you have the ability to negotiate with the seller on the type of repairs based up to the limit. Okay, negotiation power. Now, I threw this in there, but it's going to get a little sticky. But negotiation power, the buyer in the as-is contract, the buyer can be viewed as having less power. Seller does not have to negotiate. So when you go into an as-is contract, you're basically making an agreement. A lot of times people will say, listen, I'm going to give you this price, but I'm not going to ask for repairs. Okay. If you're going in with an as-is contract, that's what you're essentially saying. So if you find something that you'd really like to have repaired, the seller's under no obligation per that contract to repair anything. Okay. So it can be deemed as less negotiable for the buyer in that sense. A lot of times buyers like to go into it because it makes the seller feel better about not having to be obligated to repair. So they feel like they might get a less price, right? Now, negotiation power on the standard contract. The buyer has more power since the seller must fix issues up to the repair cap. So power is a very delicate word there, but what we're saying is that the buyer has rights to have certain things fixed that are aligned with the contract up to the seller's repair. So if the faucet's leaking and they want to continue with the contract, per the contract, the seller has to fix that leak in order to make that happen. Okay. Handling of major repairs. Okay. handling of any major repairs that may come up, if the roof's leaking, if the AC just went out completely during your inspection. And an as-is contract, the buyer must handle repairs or just walk away. That's the way the contract reads. You are either taking it on in its as-is condition, or you have the right to cancel the contract. In a standard contract, seller must repair up to the contract limit. You're getting the hang of this, right? Like there's a set limit. If that AC can be repaired for under $5,000, whatever the limit is, seller's got to do it, okay? Termite WDO. Now, these are separate inspections within a lot of contracts. Termite WDO stands for wood destroying organisms. They're looking for wood rot that might be caused by termites or other infestation. Again, in an as-is, both of these stay true. Seller's not responsible for anything on an as-is, and seller must cover repairs up to the limit for there. As-is contract, let's talk about this next category is best for sellers who, okay? So in an as-is contract, it's best for sellers who want a quick, hassle-free sale. Basically, you're like, okay, listen, I'll sell it to you for this price, but I'm not doing anything else. Like I've negotiated, I'm not lining up repairmen, I don't want to do anything, okay? It's best for sellers that have that mindset, okay? The standard contract is best for sellers who are willing to negotiate and make repairs. Maybe they are aware that some things are wrong, but they know it's just a couple of $1,000s and they're like, listen, just to keep this thing in contract and not to let the buyer just walk away because they're not happy, I'm willing to repair up to $5,000 worth of stuff if it comes out. I built it into my budget. We got time to do it. I've got resources. So the as-is might be better. So for sellers, it's two different, it's a big decision there, right? Like it really comes down to the position of your house, what you might know about it, and what you're willing to do, what you're willing to take on, right? Now, the as-is contract under best for buyers who, okay? So as-is contract, best for buyers that are comfortable handling repairs and negotiating separately. So what they're saying here is, if you're going into it as a buyer and you're wanting to take on an as-is contract, maybe you've done renovation before, maybe you're willing to take on some little things here and there, okay? So if you're going into it as is, you have a good idea that anything that pops up and I want to go forward with a contract, it's likely that I'm going to have to deal with this after closing, okay? That's the expectation for a buyer. Okay, for a standard contract, it's best for buyers who want the seller-funded repairs for major issues. So if you're a buyer that's like, listen, I'm not really wanting to do anything after closing, okay? So I'd like to negotiate a repair limit. I want most of whatever could be wrong to be taken care of before I take ownership of the house, okay? That's what that's saying. So standard or as is, those are the two different kind of models that you go through for each of those categories, all right? So let me do this. Let's go to the next slide. Let's look at a Florida real estate roof repair example, all right? So let's go through this. In the as-is contract scenario, all right? The buyer hires an inspector who finds a leaking roof. The seller is not obligated to fix it, right? The buyer can either accept the contract as is and move forward, meaning they identify the leak, looks like it might be an easy repair, we're okay with it. Or they may cancel the contract with the inspection period and get their money back. If the roof's leaking, the seller's not obligated to fix anything. You have the discretion to cancel the contract under as is and walk away, basically saying, you're not willing to take that on. It's not the property for you. That's what you're saying. Now, let's talk about this. If it's a standard contract scenario, the inspector finds the same leaking roof, same inspection, same leaking roof. If the repair cost is within the agreed upon repair limit, let's use the $5,000 we did earlier. So let's say we get the repair quote, and the guy's like, I can fix that leaky roof for $3,500. If then the seller must repair it, right? So it's within that limit. So the limit's $5,000. The repair is going to cost $3,500. The seller is obligated to make that repair under the contract, okay? Now, let's go over this scenario. What if the repair cost exceeds the limit? So let's say we have $5,000 repair limit, but the repair cost is $7,000, okay? The seller might agree to fix it, okay? The one way that a seller can keep this under contract is anything that goes above the repair limit, if they will make the repair, if it's above the repair limit, they can keep it in contract. They can agree to do that, limiting the buyer's ability to walk away due to the repair, okay? The buyer might agree to cover the extra cost. Sometimes we negotiate and say, hey, listen, I know it's $6,000 for the repair, but we've got a $5,000 repair limit. He's willing to credit you $5,000 or go ahead and get it repaired and you pay the difference from the $5,000 on that. That does happen, so we negotiate. Now, if no agreement can be made, let's say that the repair quote is $7,000. Let's say per the contract, you got two quotes and they both came in at $7,000 and the repair limit's $5,000. And let's say the seller goes, you know what, my repair limit's $5,000, I'm not doing anything else. Let's say the buyer says, listen, I'm not willing to take that on. So if you're not willing to take on more than $5,000 to have this fixed, I have the right to cancel my contract, get my deposit, and walk away, and that's what I'm doing, okay? So in the contract, you can end up negotiating a little bit more in both of these scenarios, but when there's money involved in quotes and repairs on the back end of a standard contract, it becomes a little bit more of a dance or a negotiation. And most of my experience is very rare that we get quotes beyond the repair limit if the repair limit stays reasonable. As I said, in most of the standard contracts, it's preset in there at 1.5% of the purchase price as the repair limit. But a lot of times, depending on the seller's knowledge about their own property, they might say, look, there's not going to be anything above $3,000 on this thing. If there is, I'm willing to take care of it up to that amount. So let's set it at that amount. Okay? Is that clear? So I think that helps you just kind of walk through kind of a scenario of things that could come up and how it's handled. As is just pretty cut and dry. So let's look at one more thing, because this is a very crucial part. And this is where a lot of the issue comes in to defining exactly what needs to be repaired, okay? If you're going into a standard contract, a lot of people, I'll get these inspection reports sent over to me and they'll just say, the buyer will say, hey, fix everything. Well, the contract actually outlines what is able to be fixed and what's not considered. So I thought I'd go through a couple of those real quick, okay? So the contract specifically, I'm gonna just say this right side column, as is, we already know the theme of the day. Seller's not obligated to fix anything, right? So it's none of this that I'm going over cosmetic or warrantable has anything to do with the as is because they're not obligated. Now, under the standard one, let's go over the contract representing cosmetic repairs and warrantable repairs. The contract calls for the seller to have obligation toward warrantable repairs. Line 2 here, those warrantable repair examples are like roof leaks, plumbing issues, electrical problems, HVAC failures, okay? A good way to put it is anything that detriments the way that the home should function, okay? All the systems being waterproof, things like that. The home should be performing as it's designed to do. And if it's not, you could deem that as warrantable and required under the contract for the seller to repair if you're in a standard contract. Things that do not come up, and this is the sticking point, cosmetic repairs, okay? Examples, paint chips, carpet stains, nail holes, minor cracks, okay? A lot of those things like that are cosmetic by nature and the seller's not obligated to make those repairs. So let's say you're going down a hallway and you see some paint chips, okay? Or you see some scratches on the floor, on the wood floor, or some minor cracking, all right? Or some stain on the carpet. Now, the inspector may note it on his inspection report, but basically you need to understand what the difference between a cosmetic repair is or request versus a warrantable. Warrantable is something that you are obligated to ask for per the contract. Cosmetic things like scratches and chips and things like that are not obligated by the seller to be repaired, okay? Reason for that is little chips and scratches, they can turn into big things, right? But that's just normal wear and tear. Doesn't necessarily take away from the function of the home. But a lot of times where it gets messed up is I'll get an agent to send me over a repair request and it'll have things like, hey, saw some scratches on the wall. We just want the whole wall repainted, okay? That's not a requirement. So then we end up going back and forth. And the danger in that is that the buyer hasn't been educated on the front end on what they can ask for. And so they just ask for it. So when we say no, they feel like we're negotiating with them or we're trying to be hard in some way, when technically they never should have asked it in the first place. Now, if they're aware they can't ask it and they still ask it anyway, I guess that's fine. It's just all about the expectation. We don't want people asking for things that they are not even knowing that they can't ask for per the contract. Okay, that's the point. All right, so I'm happy to send these slides to anybody that needs it, but my point today was just to kind of give you an overview of the two different scenarios. And I think the most important thing in this is going into it with the right strategy, right expectation. And I can tell you, I never throw a blanket over these as just one mindset, because a lot of it can be home specific. Sometimes when we're buying renovation properties or older homes that we're going to do a ton of work to anyway, we'll go in and offer as is because we're really just investigating to see what can be done. We know that the repairs may be over the repair limit automatically, right? And the seller may know that, and they'll be like, listen, this is a 1980 home, still got all the original stuff. It's got a ton of problems. I'm letting you know that. I'm willing to sell it in as-is condition. All right, so the buyer goes into it knowing that if they're going to take this house on, it's going to be on them to fix anything. But the seller also knows that if they're willing to sell it at this, that the buyer can walk for really any reason during the inspection. Okay, so there's trade-offs, and we talk about this through either one. So just wanted to get this out there to you, just to make you aware that there's two different scenarios, but more than anything, just to have the right expectation as we move forward through the process on what our options are and what our options are not based on the scenario, so that we can talk that through. And that's for buyers and sellers. So I hope you found this educational today, as we say, and we've got more to come on various topics in and around the contract. And as always, just let us know any questions you may have. Talk to you soon.